We have some major warnings to talk about in the gold, silver, copper market today because Fort Knox has been a call to audit this. I'll be talking to you guys about the truth, about the matter. We have one of the biggest warnings as well people should tune into at the end of the video. So there is a huge warning about an incoming food crisis that we'll talk about towards the end. And we also have some major updates to talk about the Iran conflict, where we're sitting with that, and also some other important things coming out of Trump, and also artificial intelligence, because Michael Burry has signaled another major warning that we'll talk about in today's video. So we have a ton to get through. If you guys get value out of these, just do me a favor, like the video. It's a signal you are listening, you're alive, and I appreciate that. And let's get straight into the video right here. So last 48 hours for the gold and silver market, guys. A lot of volatility, a lot of sideways trading, a lot of pushing down as well to some degree. You can see here on Thursday, we pushed down to $71. A big red candle coming in right here just recently, last 24 hours, pushing silver down to $73. And playing similar is gold. And somewhat holding up pretty strong is copper as well. So there is a lot of, sideways volatility, suppression. This is the nature of the beast at the moment, because a lot of what we're seeing in the markets, actually, I correct myself with copper. That was a stock I was looking at before. Copper's actually looking quite strong. But one thing we are seeing is there is a lot of volatility, a lot of suppression, and this is paired up perfectly to the news we're getting out of the Iran conflict. But I have to say, some of this news about the Iran conflict is actually very bad, and we'll talk about that at the end of the video, because there is an impending bad thing that might happen next year that we'll talk about. But into some regards, we have seen Iran, nearly 30 ships have successfully crossed the Strait of Hormuz. That was yesterday. So somewhat a little bit of good news, but it's not really running at full capacity. So there is a lot of things that are not fully running. Talks are still ongoing, but you guys know, look, if you've been tuning into my videos, right, we have a perfect understanding of both these sides. We know the Iranians, they have like a line in the sand about a lot of things. They're not really budging with much in terms of negotiations. They have a pretty hard line. Trump is not really giving in, but the problem that is really coming out of this conflict is the US hasn't been successful in defeating Iran militarily. So unless they go for some type of like doomsday scenario, or they just throw ethics completely out the window, Iran appears to be very hard to actually defeat. And that's what's stalling this conflict. So unlike the previous conflicts with, Afghanistan and say Iraq, where those governments after a period of time actually did crumble, even though both those conflicts, they're out of the influence of the US now, the initial phases, they were quite successful, especially say Iraq with the shock and awe, getting rid of Saddam pretty quickly. The same deal has not happened with Iran. So now we're in this like drawn out, stalemate, which is just getting uglier and uglier and uglier. And it might actually have some bad consequences flowing into next year. And we'll talk about the farming situation as well, because it's not looking great. It's just some other things that are coming out. Trump is talking about a drone port in the US. And this is what it's going to look like, apparently. That's probably an AI picture right there. And it's going to protect Washington. But what is he really protecting it against? That's my question. Like, are the Chinese really coming? Are the Russians really coming? Or is this just more distractions to keep, the plebs, distracted from how bad the economy is going right now, and the global trade market right there. But there's a drone port, so watch out for that coming up in the future. And also, we have some warnings coming out of Michael Burry. So this guy predicted the GFC correctly. He made a lot of money off that. I have to caveat by saying some of his further on predictions weren't actually that correct, and he actually lost money on some trades. But he does have an interesting scenario right here about these AI companies. And I want to sum up this. So I won't read out the whole thing, but he's talking about like the deals between these companies. Okay, and to summarize this up quickly so you guys can kind of get the big picture, this is what is at play right here. So Michael Burry has claimed the massive NVIDIA and Elon Musk AI deal is a financial illusion. So the setup is NVIDIA sells billions in AI chips to a shell company that allows NVIDIA to book huge revenue, while Musk's AI gets to use the chips without legally owning them or putting them on their balance sheet. The scary part, this legally invisible deal is secretly funded by Wall Street debt using retirement savings of everyday Americans. Tech giants get the profits and the computing power, while regular retirees unknowingly carry all the risk. So we're going to find out in the future whether his prediction comes true, whether this whole thing unwinds, whether these things are fully like overvalued or not. We'll get a better understanding of that, but you know, it could go either way right now because AI is a bit of it's a bit of a black box. I'd conclude it's a black box at the moment because we do know AI, and especially AI robotics, which will literally replace physical human labor. Look, if it's just a race for the world, whoever like controls the robots and controls the AI can potentially control the planet. And, you know, that is a little bit dark, but it's kind of like it's the way I see things to some degree. But that is one of the big pieces of the puzzle right there. So maybe this is overvalued. Maybe it's not. Maybe this whole thing will come tumbling down. We're going to find out in the future. Now, Trump has come out with this. Now, is this a distraction? Is this the truth? Trump is calling for an audit of Fort Knox. So the big question is, why hasn't Trump already done this already? He's already been president for ages, and he's been president for ages again. And so President Trump calls for a physical audit of Fort Knox's gold reserves. The U.S. reports holding 147 million troy ounces of gold at Fort Knox, worth $500 billion. Yet Fort Knox has not undergone an independent physical audit in over 70 years. So like Trump, he should be asking himself why he hasn't audited Fort Knox. So I don't really get the point of this. Maybe it's a distraction. Maybe it's to keep people, you know, distracted from the bigger picture of what's kind of going on. And what I actually believe, so my own independent opinion, I probably think the gold isn't there. I guess if they did do an audit of Fort Knox gold, they could probably just fake it anyway. And remember with gold, if you look at history, and if you want a good documentary, even though, look, the quality of this documentary looks very bad. I'll just bring it up on here if you're watching this on YouTube. But this old school documentary has a lot of value in it, right? So it goes into the history of like money and banking. And also it goes into the history of like Venice bankers and the gold scam they used to do. And it's called the Money Masters right there. You can watch it for free on YouTube. It goes for like, you know, a while. So it's a while to get through. You probably won't get through it in one day. But it's got a lot of good value in there. But one thing I would say is, yes, there has been a gold scam in the past where, you know, they loan out money and it's the paper value and the gold actually isn't there. But the extra scam as well. So I want you guys on this channel to think about with gold as well to some degree. Look, gold is a hedge against money printing. It is a hedge against government expenditure. It is a hedge against politicians, right? That is true. There's a lot of historical gravitational pull towards gold between different societies, Chinese, different countries all around the world. They all gravitate towards gold in history. So that psychological power is there. But I would also caveat by saying, you know, true wealth to some degree is still within the people themselves. So like if you were marooned on a tropical island, right? And this is the way to figure out if an asset is really productive or not. It's like, what does a gold bar actually do for you in that scenario? It doesn't actually do much. So you'd actually want fishing rods. You'd want to build stuff. You would want bamboo. You'd want water filters. You would want solar power. So in that scenario, in an isolated kind of island economy, gold isn't that productive. So you have to understand that to some degree. So sometimes it can be used as a trick. So I think in the past, in medieval times, it was probably oversold its magical powers. But really, the true power is you know, in the people themselves, not so much the money makers and the people who just make money out of nothing, can write loans and loan out the gold, right? So remember, there's a big trick involved. And Money Masters to some degree does cover that, but that's my opinion as well. So even though I love gold, remember in history, you know, there were seashells. So you can see it in the background right here, was used as money. There was even sticks used as money, and it was actually debt-free as well. So the whole scam of interest and debt, it didn't exist in the past. And even if you look at ancient Greeks, they banned it, right? They said it was a financial sickness to loan out loan out money at interest. And you can actually see right here coming out of Aristotle, one of the greats of, you know, civilization for Western people anyway. The most hated sort, and with the greatest reason, is usury, which makes a gain out of money itself and not from the natural object of it. For money was intended to be used in exchange, but not to increase its interest. And the term interest, which means the birth of money from money, is applied to the breeding of money because the offspring resembles the parent, where for all of modes of getting wealth, this is the most unnatural. And the other thing to understand as well, right? So if there's a scheme like this, where there is lots of interest and there's lots of debt, there's lots of fake money in the circulation, who benefits from that? That's what you really should be asking yourself. And I have a good idea, but we might save it for another day. But watch out for that. And if we have a look right here, this is the mega warning. And let's listen into this, because this could be worth just paying attention to it. Not saying this is going to become 100% true, but I think if you have the mindset of, I'm going to listen to different ideas, doesn't mean I have to, fully believe them or take them or act on them. But if you entertain ideas and you can, just have different little risk scenarios on the radar, it might put you in a very good spot in the future. So let's listen into this. This is a very dire prediction, and I'll give you guys my take as well. So pay attention to this.
It's not going to be, it costs a lot to buy food. It's going to be a competition for any food, especially next year, because we're still in 2026, we're eating the 2025 harvest. Well, the 2026 harvest is having a problem. There isn't enough fertilizer. There's going to be a big comeuppance next year. And then you're going to have all of these social pressures, both in American cities and in European cities, where these populations that are already rioting, arson riots like in France, all kind of just anger murders, anger gang rapes in Europe. What happens when these people aren't just angry and hostile, but when they're actually hungry? And it's not a question of the government just putting more cash on their debit card when there's no food to buy with whatever amount of cash is on your debit card. And we're going to see that at the end of this year and next year. And we're still watching Trump and Treasury Secretary and others saying, oh, as soon as we make a deal, the price of a barrel of oil is going to be lower than ever. It's going to be great. This is complete fantasy. I mean, we are not ever going to see as much oil come out of the Persian Gulf as it was before February 28th. At best, it may be 50 or 60%. That's under perfect conditions. And these 1,500 ships in the Persian Gulf, even if a deal was made today, they're not going to be able to leave the Persian Gulf like it's the Oklahoma land rush, thousands of wagons in a race to put down your homestead stakes. It's not going to be like that.
So there we go. Very dire prediction coming out of Matt Bracken. And if that comes true, obviously it's going to be terrible. But I'd say the silver lining of this is, sometimes, in forests, if you use the forest metaphor and you have like an overgrown forest and it's just like rotten and it's just overgrown. Sometimes if there is a big kind of clearing fire through the forest, it can actually be really healthy for it. So I'd say like the silver lining of this is, if society does go down, like he's predicting right here, it's going to be an opportunity to build it back better. And I think the number one asset in this type of environment will actually be the asset of having a good network around you when this thing happens. So, having a network of people will always trump any type of kind of isolated asset, right? So you obviously want to be looking at things like Second Amendment rights and all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, a network of people in a doomsday scenario will come out top, especially when the grid might go down. And that is something to ponder for. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but, remember, it's always the sun is always rising, so things will get better eventually. And that's today's update. So a bit of a mixed update. I'm just telling you guys how it is. Keeping it real right here on the channel. If you want the next one where we talk through some other scenarios, guys, subscribe. Appreciate you tuning in. Go have a great start to the week. I'll see you in the next one.